Uh, Dear Earthmates, we are visiting Muhsine Arda in Turkey. She's based in Bursa, one of the former capitals of the Ottoman Empire. And she's uh, an exemplary Earthmate, uh, a poet and a novelist, a brave one. I will tell you why she is brave. Thank you so much, dear Muhsine, for accepting
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's lovely being here. It's an honor.
for me as well. And uh, we have met for more than 40 years now. We met
That's right.
when in Aramco, Saudi Arabia, in early 1980s. And I have seen you as a very courageous um, person, um, um, challenging uh, all sorts of obstacles and overcoming those obstacles successfully. I have great respect for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I have been a fighter all in my life.
Yes. And my usual first question is, how did your love for literature begin?
Well, very early, at a very, very early age, not with the intention to become a writer or a poet, of course, but I grew up in a household that books were everywhere. I had a teacher father and three sisters who were being educated to become a teacher. And so in our house, there were books around, and every night, uh, one kind of book was read. One night a novel, and a second night a poetry from Turkish folk poets, and another night from Farsi poet Mevlana. I always call him part. And another night was read a novel. So I grew up like that, and without realizing what I am reading and whether it's a child book, children's book or not, I was reading all the books. For example, I read Balzac's, I don't know the name in English, Vadideki Zambak. Uh, when I was really 10 years old. Can you believe it?
Wow.
And so I don't know what I understood at that time, but my father was not limiting me, saying that this is a children's book or this is an adult book. So he was saying that you can read any book here, but if you don't understand, you can ask us, and if you don't understand it either, then you have to wait and read it again when you are grown up. So that's how I grew up. And I started writing letters. I learned how to read and write by myself at the age of 5. And so from 6 years old or 5 years old, I don't know, I was writing letters to my sisters who were being educated in another city. So I can say that at an early age, I started the literature in the part of writing letters. So
Mhm.
I still write letters as essays.
Mhm.
So
Very
that's, I think, that how I started and how I was exposed to literature.
wow. And then uh, after writing letters, um, what else in the field of literature? What else did you?
Yes. Well, in my teenage years, at early ages, of course, I was interested in boys, and I was writing love poems, whether
Wonderful.
they are whether they are called poems or not. But I was writing maybe to my dream boyfriend. I didn't have a boyfriend at all. But thanks to Ümit Yaşar Oğuzcan's love letters and
Mhm.
Eyüboğlu's Çatal Karam Çingenem.
Yes.
So I was idolizing a boyfriend possibly in my dreams or in my daydreams. So I was writing love poems. And then at the age of 16, I wrote a short story, but my literature teacher didn't like it and didn't believe actually, maybe liked it, but didn't believe that I wrote it. So she told me that she will fail me from the class unless I tell her that where I stole the story.
This is horrible.
And horrible. And I was always a girl that who grew up without being afraid of telling my ideas. So I told the teacher that, and I said, you are the teacher of literature. You have to find out from whom I stole it, or I will insist that this is my story. And I threw my paper to her desk. And
Wow.
of And of course, I was called by the discipline committee. And I defended myself in the same way. And, uh, and then, of course, nobody knew a story like that. So they gave me a task. They said, well, write another story or something like that. And I refused it. And they said, well, do something with the literature, then we will believe in your abilities and then you will pass this class. So I began uh, to think that what I can do. And the librarian gave me a short stories book. And she said that, oh, we have got a new book. And it was Anton Chekhov's short
Oh,
stories.
wonderful.
And there was a story there, tütünün zararları,
Hmm.
the bad points of tobacco. I don't remember English name.
Of tobacco, I would say.
Yes, exactly. So when I read that short story, I loved it. And I dashed to the one of the teachers who was in the discipline committee. I said, I will act a play. And then he said, what? And I said, Anton Chekhov's a short story. And he said, but this is a short story. And I said, well, I will make it a play.
Wow.
And really, I don't know how I did that, but they brought three classes together, and all the literature teachers and the director of the school. And I read that story in a way that acting.
Hmm.
And then I passed the literature class, but then I stopped writing.
Or as a
Yeah,
protest.
because, yes, as a protest. And then I wrote a novel about the university years, but then those were the difficult years. The police was raiding the houses and for the books and everything. And then, unfortunately, my first novel was burned uh, in the stove. Then I altogether stopped writing until I was 36.
Wow. Striking.
Yes, yes.
And
It,
um, uh, that you had an independent personality even when you were little, um, is revealed in the fact that you wrote love poems for
Yes,
imaginary or not, but that is also because not many girls, I think, do that. And boys tend to do that, I know, but girls probably suppress or oppress their, you know.
yes,
Uh,
yes.
hmm,
But I was given, when I was 12 years old, I was given a notebook, a poetry notebook uh, from by a sister of mine. So because my sisters were writing the poems into their poetry books, in those years, the poetry books were not found very much in most of the places. So whenever they went to the libraries, whenever they read a nice poem, they were copying the poems. So I was reading all their poems, and then I was given a poetry notebook to write down the poems that I loved. So maybe that's why, yes, love wasn't suppressed in my family.
wonderful, wonderful. This is real freedom, freedom of love, freedom of thought, freedom of expression.
Yes,
You were brought up in an unusually democratic family. Wonderful.
yes,
I
yes,
had the same privilege, and
lovely.
and uh, I was shocked later on in real life. I mean, I thought that was the normal thing.
Yes, that's true. That's true. I mean, at the university, I think the second year, I have had a boyfriend, and there was an Irish girl that who was staying in our house as an exchange student. So one night I invited my boyfriend for dinner. So he came, and then when I was introducing him to my father, I said, "Father, this is so and so, and he's my boyfriend." And then everybody froze, uh, and the poor boy was so afraid. I think he was already uh, getting ready to run under the table. And so my father jokingly said, "Well, I see that he's a boy." So, and then I was so crazy. I said, "Yes, father, but he is the boy that in the parks we hold each other's hands."
Wow, wonderful.
And so my father said, "Well, it's okay, but let's give up this conversation because the dinner is getting cold."
Wow,
So
how wise.
So we sat down and we ate the dinner, and poor boy left the house after dinner sometimes. And then the next morning, my mother said, "Why did you do this?" And I said, "Well, because you always told me that I shouldn't lie to anybody and I should be responsible for my acts." And when my father woke up and he asked the same question, and I said, uh, well, I wanted you to know him and to try to understand him. And then maybe you can advise me whether he's a good boy or not. And
Wonderful.
he said, "All right, then invite him again."
Wow.
But then the Irish girl went to the company that she was the trainee. She told them the story that Muhsine invited her boyfriend and introduced him to her father. Then everybody said that, "No, this is a joke. You misunderstood."
Wow.
So I grew up like that. Yes, it was a privilege to grow up in a family like this.
Yeah, I feel great respect uh, uh, for them, to them. And when you write your novels, you choose a topic and then you focus on it and you study the area, the field, and you know,
Yes.
mention your novels and how you
Yes.
approach writing your novels.
Well, all my life, in our literature lessons, for example, we were always asked what is the subject of the novel or the story, and what is the idea, and what we can learn from this story or novel.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this kind of approach nailed me an idea that a literary piece, although it is written from the imaginary and imagination is the base of it, but there should be an idea behind it, and there should be something that we can learn about it, or we can start to think about it. So I think that is this idea is always in my brain whenever I am writing anything, a poem or a short story or an essay or a novel. So my novels and all of them, actually, whatever I write is that uh, basically or mainly about women's rights and human rights in the frame of human rights. So nothing should be against the human rights, or there should be some way of expressing the ideas of about the women's rights in the frame of human rights. But there are some subjects in Turkey or in most of the countries that they are accepted as like taboos and or ignored. Uh, so I began to think about this kind of subjects, and I realized that committing suicide is is a big sin in most of the sins, actually most of the religions, and for that reason, maybe in most of the societies, it's a hush hush subject.
Mm-hmm. True.
Uh, in the movies, in the novels, in the short stories, yes, it is written that somebody committed suicide, but then uh, they are talking about the action of it or the characters who are doing that, but nobody mentioned, or there are some books, but I didn't read anything. Nobody is mentioning what happens to the people that their relatives, their loved ones, or their friends committed suicide. So and then in my life I encountered so many people that their loved ones committed suicide. And without realizing, I gave courage to go on live to a friend of mine. An Austrian friend of mine has written me one Christmas time that her mother died, and her sister, who looked after the mother all her life, couldn't bear the idea, and she committed suicide. So I wrote her a letter. I don't know what I wrote. That letter is still not in my hand. And I forget about it. The next year, I received another letter from my friend, Mariana, and she was thanking me to give her the courage to live. And I couldn't understand. And I read the letter further, and apparently, after her sister committed suicide, she began to get into the depression, and she decided to commit suicide too. And then she got prepared, and she tried to think that how she's gonna kill herself. And then she realized that when her sister committed suicide, to clear her house was much more painful than her being dead. So she decided to clear her house and to get rid of all the unnecessary things, and then do the action. And then when she pulled one of the drawers, my letter fell down. She didn't open it when I sent it. So she said, oh, okay, I'm going to kill myself. So let me read Muhsine's letter. I have no idea what I have written to her. And after my letter, she got up and she said, forget about dying. I'm going to live. So after that letter from Mariana's and more counters about this subject, I decided that I should write about a book and the tears of the suicide. But I am not writing because I'm not a psychologist and psychiatrist. I'm not dwelling on the suicide, but what happens to the loved ones. So, and it is interesting, and I did a lot of research, and I read about it, and then I did. It took me almost 10 years to write that novel. And because then when you write without stopping. And then I wrote and wrote and wrote, and then it was too long. Then I had to shorten, and then there was no connection between the stories. So it took me a long time, and the subject wasn't very joyful subject, but my novel is giving the idea, my teacher's question, what can we learn from this novel or short story, was always in my mind. So I can answer that anybody who can read that novel can understand that life is much more precious than we thought. We shouldn't commit suicide, and we should live. Then I thought that maybe it is my duty to write about some taboo subjects. And then the idea about writing the mothers who have disabled children, whatever the disability is. They can be Down syndrome, autistic, they can be cystic fibrosis, or cerebral sequelae, or any other disability. But then again, when I began to search about this subject, most of the people were writing or filming the success of the disabled people, which is a great subject. Most of the disabled people are very courageous, and with the ideas and with the help of the other people around them, they succeed in life in various wonderful ways. I cherish them, I congratulate them. But I realized that nobody is writing about the mothers of those children. It is interesting again that all my life, we had, or later on, I had a neighbor who had a disabled child with this reason, with that reason. So I began to search about it. What can be the cause of these disabilities, or how can I write about it? So it took me 6 years. I read a lot of medical papers to learn, is there any knowledge about this part, or when I am writing about this, I shouldn't give any wrong idea or any wrong information. So I read a lot of medical papers, and then I began to create my characters in my mind. And then I decided that the women should be from very different backgrounds, very different educational level, very different family life. So I created 5 characters, and one is a German woman, and 4 of them are from Turkey. One is a child bride, unfortunately. So that is, I try to touch again to do taboo subjects, because most of the women who had a child with a disability unfortunately left by their husbands. So women are giving up their lifestyle, their education, their ambitions, their dreams, and they are really spending all their energy to make the life easier for their disabled child. So I hope that I did manage. And then after 6 years, and after interviewing lots of mothers, almost 60 women I interviewed, and everybody asked me whether I will write their story, and I said, no, no, it is nobody's story, but it is going to be everybody's story. So my book is about 5 women. 2 of them have Down syndrome babies, and one had cerebral sequelae, as I said, and then cystic fibrosis, and then one child is autistic. And lots of doctors helped me, because I kept sending them what I wrote, and I said, is there anything that which I wrote wrong, medically, or against the science, or so people helped me, and they were really shocked, because they said, well, how come you are reading all these papers, medical papers? But I said, well, these women have to have their birth. So I had to learn all the facts. So yes, I try to write something which is a fiction, but fiction of non-fiction.
Yes, wonderful.
Uh,
Uh, your works have been translated into other languages, some of them.
yes, yes. My poems are almost now maybe 16, 20 different languages. They have been translated. And my first novel, The Tears of Suicide, has been translated and published in Swedish and in Spanish and Farsi. But in Farsi, literature problems started, because when the book was ready to be published, the publisher sent it to the mullahs in Iran, because I didn't know that every book has to be proved by them.
Uh,
So
a censorship committee, censor
yes,
committee.
censorship committee, and they said that this book is against Islam,
What?
because yes, my first book was written with the first person. And that person was the person that who committed suicide. So I was writing from the mouth of somebody that was in limbo.
Oh, but the book is against suicide, actually.
Exactly. But they didn't read it, possibly. And so they refused. So the publisher was very, very sad because everything was ready.
How
I
about
mean,
having it published online and outside Iran? So that
yes, now that the translator is has sent it to a company in Sweden who are publishing Farsi books.
wonderful,
So we are expecting news from them.
good.
But if it fails too, then I think we will do it on online.
Yes, yes. Yeah, online,
Online.
really, it's easier. No, the whole world can have access to it. In actually, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 copies or more can be printed, and then plus
Yes,
as an ebook. You know, that would be good.
yes, yes.
Uh,
Yes, I think so because this is I mean suicide is a big problem in every country. In Baltic countries, in Japan is a problem. For example, in Japan, somebody was interested in publishing, but then the committee decided that they were translating only the dead writers and mainly male writers'
how
books.
interesting. How
Very interesting.
wow.
Uh, so I'm still fighting. I'm still fighting, but
Yes, and unfortunately, we have just a few minutes left.
yes,
Uh, I know that you taught Turkish at New York. Uh,
NYU.
yes, and with Professor Talat Halman, um, whom
Yes,
we both respect a lot. And you're also an organizer. Um, you are you organized our World Poetry Day event in 1996 in Bursa in 1997, and the following years I'm
yes.
uh,
It's
thankful to you for that. And one last thing, what would you recommend or suggest to young Earthmates in the world?
they should read and they should read whatever they like and whatever they find, and they should write. And they don't, nobody has to be a great writer or a poet, but everybody should write. And then because writing will take their thoughts and feelings out, and in that way, the number one, they will find themselves. Number two, they will find the right ways to approach the life, and they will find a way to help the others.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, dear Muhsine, dear Muhsine Arda.
Thank you very much.
Uh,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be with you and to be with the Earthmates and all the listeners.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Together.
Thank you. Bye bye. Bye bye.